Men over 60, top 5 foods to boost testosterone and regain your edge. Gentlemen, I have a question for you. What if I told you that the difference between feeling like a shadow of your younger self and waking up every day full of energy, strength, and drive could be sitting right on your dinner plate? You might think low testosterone is just part of getting older. Many doctors say it's natural, learn to live with it. I say, not so fast. Because here's the truth. I've seen men in their 60s not only stop the decline but turn it around. And no, it didn't happen in a lab or with expensive prescriptions. It happened in their kitchens with simple, everyday foods most of us overlook. And I know some of you are skeptical. You've heard the hype before, eat this, drink that, you'll feel young again. But today, we're cutting through the nonsense with science-backed, real-world results from decades of experience. These are foods that can genuinely help your body produce more testosterone naturally, and when combined with the right lifestyle habits, they can make a measurable difference in how you feel, think, and perform. Before we dive into the details, do me one quick favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. That's how you help us keep bringing you powerful, life-changing content for men who refuse to fade quietly into old age. So get ready, because in just a few moments we'll break down why testosterone drops in men over 60, why food is more powerful than you've been told, and then count down the top 5 foods that can help you regain your edge. I promise, number 1 on this list will surprise you, and it's not what most men think. Let's get started. The science of testosterone decline in men over 60. Testosterone production happens mostly in the testicles, but it's orchestrated by the brain through a precise loop between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus releases GnRH, which signals the pituitary to send out LH, and that hormone tells the testicles' Leydig cells to produce testosterone. In your younger years, this system runs like a well-tuned engine, but after 60, several changes occur. The testicles become less responsive to LH, the signal from the brain weakens, and lifestyle habits often accelerate the decline. Chronic stress, poor diet, inactivity, and inadequate sleep act like sand in the gears of your hormonal machinery. According to research in the New England Journal of Medicine, men in their 60s have testosterone levels about 30% lower than in their 30s, a drop significant enough to affect energy, mood, muscle mass, and fat distribution. Yet here's the encouraging part. The same study showed that men who maintained a nutrient-rich diet, regular physical activity, and a healthy body weight experienced much smaller declines, and in some cases, their testosterone actually increased. The Massachusetts male aging study found that physically active men consistently had higher testosterone than their sedentary peers. Another study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism revealed that losing just 10% of body weight could boost testosterone by 15%. Diet also plays a critical role. Research from the University of Sydney linked high intake of processed sugar and trans fats with up to 20% lower testosterone, regardless of age. So the real question is, are you giving your body what it needs to keep producing testosterone, or are you slowly shutting down the factory? From over 3 decades of working with men over 60, I've seen that gradual changes in energy, drive, or strength aren't just getting older. They're often warning signs of hormone decline. The good news is that daily choices, lean proteins, leafy greens, omega-3 rich foods, strength training, and quality sleep can help you maintain healthy levels well into your later years. Consistency, not quick fixes, is what truly keeps the engine running strong. Why food matters more than most men think. Your body is a hormone factory, and testosterone is one of its most valuable products. But like any factory, it can't produce without the right raw materials. Zinc, for example, is absolutely critical. Without enough zinc, your body simply cannot produce adequate testosterone, no matter how healthy you think you are. A study in the journal Nutrition showed that men with zinc deficiency saw testosterone levels rise significantly, sometimes doubling, after 6 months of supplementation. Shellfish, lean red meat, and pumpkin seeds are excellent natural sources. Vitamin D is another essential player. Think of it as the on-off switch for your hormone machinery. Low vitamin D levels are linked to reduced testosterone, and research from Hormone and Metabolic Research found that men who took vitamin D supplements for a year increased their testosterone by over 20% compared to those who didn't. While supplements can help, regular safe sun exposure and vitamin D-rich foods like salmon and egg yolks are natural ways to keep levels up. Healthy fats are the building blocks for steroid hormones, and testosterone is no exception. Diets rich in monounsaturated fats from foods like avocados and olive oil, as well as omega-3s from fatty fish, have been shown to support higher testosterone. On the other hand, Men on extremely low-fat diets often see a drop in hormone production. Magnesium is just as important. It's involved in hundreds of enzymatic reactions, including those that regulate testosterone release. A study in the Biological Trace Element Research Journal reported that men with higher magnesium intake, especially combined with physical activity, had significantly better testosterone levels. Now, here's the part many men overlook. Eating the wrong foods doesn't just fail to help, it actively hurts you. Diets heavy in processed carbohydrates, trans fats, and added sugars cause inflammation, promote weight gain, and disrupt hormone balance. A 2018 study from the University of Sydney found that high-sugar diets were linked to up to 20% lower testosterone levels in men, regardless of their age or activity level. So let me ask you, when you open your fridge, are you seeing the raw materials your body needs to thrive, or are you stocking up on foods that slowly choke your testosterone production? From my decades in medicine, I can tell you that small daily choices in your diet add up. The right foods aren't just fuel, they're medicine for your hormones, and the wrong foods, they're poison to your vitality. Now that you understand just how much your diet can make or break your testosterone levels, let's dive into the 5 powerhouse foods that can help you reclaim your strength, energy, and edge, starting today. Number 5. Avocados. Avocados aren't just a trendy brunch item. They are one of the most underrated testosterone-supporting foods you can add to your diet. Their richness in monounsaturated fats makes them a perfect building block for hormone production, especially testosterone, which is synthesized from cholesterol and dietary fats. Diets that emphasize healthy fats over processed carbs have been shown to support healthier hormone profiles in men, particularly as they age. What makes avocados stand out even more is their boron content. Boron is a trace mineral that doesn't get much attention, yet it plays a surprisingly powerful role in regulating free testosterone, the active form of the hormone that your body can actually use. In a study published in the Journal of Trace Elements in Medicine and Biology, men who took just 10 mg of boron daily for 1 week saw significant increases in free testosterone, along with reduced levels of inflammatory markers like CRP, C-reactive protein. While supplements are one option, whole food sources like avocados provide boron along with other beneficial nutrients such as potassium, fiber, and antioxidants. There's also evidence that diets high in monounsaturated fats, like those found in avocados, may improve insulin sensitivity and reduce inflammation, 2 factors closely linked to maintaining healthy testosterone levels. Chronic inflammation and poor blood sugar control are silent hormone killers, especially in men over 60. So when you eat an avocado, you're not just giving your body raw materials for testosterone, you're also creating a healthier environment for that hormone to thrive. Now, here's something worth considering. When was the last time you thought about the fat quality in your diet, not just the quantity? Many men obsess over cutting fat for heart health, but the real question is whether you're cutting the wrong fats while ignoring the good ones. Avocados are a simple, delicious way to shift that balance in your favor. Practical ways to use them. Slice half an avocado into your breakfast omelet, spread it over whole grain toast with a sprinkle of sea salt, or blend it into a smoothie with spinach, banana, and a touch of cacao for a nutrient-packed boost. You can even dice it into salads or pair it with grilled salmon for a double dose of testosterone-friendly nutrition. In my practice, I've seen men who swapped out processed snacks for avocado-based options experience not just better lab numbers, but noticeable improvements in energy, focus, and endurance. Number 4. Leafy greens, spinach, kale. Leafy greens like spinach and kale are some of the most underrated allies in supporting healthy testosterone levels, especially for men over 60. Their standout nutrient is magnesium, a mineral involved in hundreds of enzymatic processes in the body, including those directly responsible for testosterone synthesis. Without adequate magnesium, the body's ability to produce and maintain optimal testosterone levels is compromised. In a study published in the Biological Trace Element Research Journal, men with higher magnesium intake had significantly greater testosterone levels. What's more, the effect was amplified in participants who also engaged in regular physical activity. This combination, nutrient support from leafy greens plus consistent movement, creates a natural boost that medication alone can't replicate. Another study from the International Journal of Andrology found that magnesium supplementation in physically active men increased both total and free testosterone, reinforcing the importance of pairing diet with exercise. But the benefits of spinach and kale go beyond magnesium. These vegetables are rich in dietary nitrates, natural compounds that help relax blood vessels and improve circulation. Better blood flow doesn't just help with cardiovascular health, it supports muscle performance in the gym and responsiveness in more intimate aspects of life. Improved circulation ensures that oxygen and nutrients are delivered efficiently to tissues, which is crucial for recovery, stamina, and vitality. Leafy greens are also loaded with antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin K, and polyphenols, which help reduce oxidative stress, a silent enemy of hormone health. Chronic inflammation and oxidative damage can disrupt hormone signaling, so eating foods that combat these processes is a strategic move for long-term testosterone maintenance. Here's something to think about when you look at your dinner plate. How often is it dominated by beige and brown foods, bread, pasta, meat, while the vibrant greens are missing or just an afterthought? In my years of practice, I've seen countless men make a simple shift, adding 2 cups of leafy greens daily, and notice better energy, improved digestion, and more consistent performance during workouts. Incorporating them is easier than most people think. Toss fresh spinach into scrambled eggs for breakfast, bake kale chips as a crunchy snack, or blend a handful of greens into a morning smoothie with avocado and berries. You can even sauté them with garlic and olive oil as a quick dinner side. These aren't just vegetables, they're a direct investment in your hormonal health and overall vitality. Number 3, fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines. Fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines are nutritional powerhouses when it comes to supporting testosterone health. Their high content of omega-3 fatty acids plays a dual role, reducing systemic inflammation and providing the building blocks for healthy cell membranes, both of which are critical for efficient hormone production. Chronic inflammation can disrupt the hypothalamus-pituitary-gonadal axis, the hormonal feedback loop that governs testosterone production, so keeping inflammation low isn't just about heart health, it's about preserving your vitality. These fish are also among the richest dietary sources of vitamin D, a nutrient often called the sunshine hormone because of its role in regulating so many body processes, including testosterone synthesis. Multiple studies have shown a direct correlation between vitamin D status and testosterone levels. In one clinical trial published in Hormone and Metabolic Research, overweight men who were deficient in vitamin D and supplemented for a year saw their testosterone rise by more than 20%. Another study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that men with higher vitamin D levels had significantly greater testosterone compared to those who were deficient, regardless of age. Fatty fish also provide high-quality protein, which is essential for maintaining muscle mass, a factor closely tied to testosterone production in older men. Plus, they deliver micronutrients like selenium and iodine, both important for hormonal balance and thyroid health, which indirectly supports testosterone. Here's something worth asking yourself. When was the last time your weekly menu included fish more than once? In my practice, I've noticed that men who consistently consume fatty fish 2 to 3 times a week often report not only better energy, but also sharper focus and faster recovery after physical activity. That's no coincidence. These nutrients are actively working at the cellular level to optimize performance. Incorporating fatty fish is simple. Grill a fresh salmon fillet twice a week, season with herbs and a squeeze of lemon. Keep sardines on hand for a quick lunch. On whole grain crackers with avocado, they're both satisfying and hormone-friendly. Or bake mackerel with olive oil, garlic, and rosemary for a rich, flavorful dinner. Choosing these options regularly isn't just about eating healthy. It's about fueling the hormonal foundation that supports strength, stamina, and resilience well into your 60s and beyond. Number 2, eggs, especially the yolks. Egg yolks are often misunderstood, yet they are one of the most concentrated natural sources of nutrients your body needs to produce testosterone. First, they are rich in cholesterol, which is the raw material for all steroid hormones, including testosterone. Without adequate dietary cholesterol, your body has a harder time making this crucial hormone, especially as you age and natural production slows. They're also a reliable source of vitamin D, a nutrient that acts almost like a master switch for testosterone synthesis. Men with low vitamin D levels are significantly more likely to have low testosterone, and research in hormone and metabolic research has shown that correcting vitamin D deficiency can lead to measurable increases in testosterone levels. Eggs provide this nutrient naturally, making them an easy addition to your hormone-friendly diet. Let's not forget their healthy fats, which help maintain hormone balance by supporting the structure of cell membranes and the function of hormone receptors. A diet too low in healthy fats has been linked to reduced testosterone, while balanced fat intake, particularly from whole foods like eggs, supports optimal production. In addition, eggs deliver high-quality protein and micronutrients like selenium and choline, both of which play supporting roles in reproductive and hormonal health. For years, dietary guidelines discouraged egg consumption due to concerns about cholesterol and heart disease. But large-scale studies, including research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, have found that moderate egg intake in healthy individuals does not increase cardiovascular risk when part of a balanced diet. In fact, for many older men, the benefits of the nutrients in eggs outweigh the outdated fears. Here's a question worth considering. Are you still avoiding egg yolks because of old advice, even though they might be exactly what your hormones need? In my experience, men who reintroduce whole eggs 3 to 4 a few times a week often notice improvements in satiety, steady energy, and even mood stability. To make the most of them, enjoy your eggs in different ways. Poached over whole grain toast with avocado, scrambled with spinach and mushrooms, or hard-boiled for a quick, portable snack. Simple, versatile, and nutrient-dense, eggs remain one of the most accessible testosterone-supporting foods for men over 60. Number 1. Oysters. Oysters claim the top spot for one simple but powerful reason: their unmatched zinc content. Just 6 medium oysters deliver more than 500% of your daily zinc requirement, making them the richest natural source of this mineral you can find in a typical diet. Zinc is not just another nutrient. It's a direct regulator of testosterone synthesis, influencing the activity of enzymes in the testes that are responsible for hormone production. Without enough zinc, testosterone levels can drop sharply, and over time this can impact energy, mood, muscle maintenance, and sexual health. The connection between zinc and testosterone is well documented. In a landmark study published in Nutrition, zinc-deficient men who received zinc supplementation for just 6 months saw their testosterone levels double. Another study from Biological Trace Element Research showed that even mild zinc deficiency could lower testosterone and impair sperm quality, both of which were reversible once zinc intake was restored. Zinc also supports immune function, wound healing, and the sense of taste and smell, all critical for maintaining vitality as we age. But the benefits of oysters go beyond zinc. They are an excellent source of high-quality protein, vitamin B12, selenium, and omega-3 fatty acids, nutrients that work synergistically to support cardiovascular health, brain function, and inflammation control. And because testosterone production is sensitive to overall metabolic health, these added nutrients help create an optimal environment for hormones to thrive. Here's something to think about. When was the last time you considered your zinc intake? Many men over 60 unknowingly fall short, either because they don't eat enough zinc-rich foods or because absorption declines with age. While you can find zinc in beef, pumpkin seeds, and legumes, oysters deliver it in a concentrated, highly bioavailable form that's hard to match. Incorporating oysters into your diet can be both a nutritional strategy and a culinary pleasure. Enjoy them fresh with a squeeze of lemon for a clean, briny flavor. Add them to seafood stews for depth, or grill them with garlic and herbs for a smoky twist. I've seen patients who added oysters to their meals once or twice, a week notice, not just improvements in their lab results, but also in their overall vigor and recovery after physical activity. Sometimes the simplest changes, like adding a few oysters to your diet, can have the most noticeable impact on how you feel and perform. Lifestyle factors that multiply the benefits. Even the most testosterone-friendly diet can only go so far if the rest of your lifestyle works against you. Strength training is one of the most effective natural stimulators of testosterone, especially compound exercises like squats, deadlifts, and bench presses that engage large muscle groups and trigger strong hormonal responses. Research in the European Journal of Applied Physiology found that men training 3 times a week for 12 weeks saw significant increases in total and free testosterone, particularly older adults who paired exercise with adequate protein intake. Sleep is equally critical, as most testosterone is produced during REM cycles. A Journal of the American Medical Association study showed that just 1 week of sleeping only 5 hours a night caused a 10–15% drop in testosterone. For men over 60, 7 to 8 hours of quality rest is essential for hormone health. Managing stress is another key factor, since chronic stress raises cortisol, a hormone that suppresses testosterone and promotes belly fat. Practices like meditation, deep breathing, or daily walks have been shown to reduce cortisol and help maintain hormonal balance. Finally, It's important to avoid testosterone killers such as excessive alcohol, refined sugar, and processed foods, which drive inflammation, insulin resistance, and nutrient depletion. Research in clinical endocrinology found men with processed heavy diets had significantly lower testosterone than those eating whole, nutrient-rich foods. The question to ask yourself is whether your daily habits are building your hormone health or quietly eroding it. Because when diet, exercise, sleep, stress control, and smart food choices work together, the benefits multiply far beyond what any single change could achieve. Stories and case studies. I once worked with Robert, a 64-year-old retired engineer who came to me feeling constantly drained, irritable, and noticeably weaker with each passing year. His blood work confirmed what I suspected. His testosterone levels were well below the optimal range for his age. We didn't start with medication. Instead, we took a natural, step-by-step approach. We adjusted his diet to include 3 of the testosterone-boosting foods we've discussed: fatty fish twice a week for omega-3s and vitamin D, leafy greens daily for magnesium and circulation, and eggs for healthy fats and cholesterol. We paired these changes with light resistance training twice a week and encouraged him to spend more time outdoors to naturally increase vitamin D. The results were remarkable. After 6 months, Robert's testosterone had improved by 18%, but the real transformation was in how he felt. His energy returned, his mood stabilized, and his motivation came back. His wife told me, "I feel like I got my husband back," and Robert himself admitted he hadn't realized how far he'd slipped until he started to feel like his old self again. Robert's case isn't unique. I recall another patient, James, 67, who had never set foot in a gym. He began with short 20-minute bodyweight workouts, cut processed sugar from his diet, and added oysters, spinach, and avocado into his meals. In 4 months, not only did his testosterone rise by 12%, but he reported sharper focus, better sleep, and a surprising return of confidence. Studies back this up. Research from the Journal of Gerontology shows that combined dietary and lifestyle changes can improve testosterone levels by 10–20% in older men without medical intervention. It makes me wonder, how many men are living at half their potential simply because they've accepted fatigue, irritability, and loss of strength as normal aging? In my decades of practice, I've seen time and again that with the right foods, targeted exercise, and consistent habits, men can reclaim a level of vitality they thought was gone for good. The question is, are you ready to take the first step toward getting that version of yourself back? All right, gentlemen, let's do a quick recap. We've talked about why testosterone drops in men over 60, how the right foods can give your body the raw materials it needs, and we've counted down the top 5 testosterone-boosting foods, plus the lifestyle habits that can multiply their impact. You've also heard real stories from men who made these changes and saw not just better numbers on a lab report, but real improvements in energy, mood, strength, and confidence. Here's the takeaway. This isn't about quick fixes or miracle cures. It's about making consistent daily choices that give your body every chance to thrive. Whether it's adding leafy greens to breakfast, swapping processed snacks for nuts, or making time for strength training, every small step adds up. If you've watched this far, it means you're serious about your health, and I want to thank you for that. Now, here's how you can help us keep creating videos like this. Hit that like button, share this with another man over 60 who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into men's health and vitality. Your best years aren't behind you. They're ahead if you choose to make them that way. Thanks for watching, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.